Hello, and welcome to our first week of job hunting advice. My name is Tim Hayes, and I am our Technology and Innovation Coordinator here at the Wesley Public Library. This week we'll be talking about resumes, what a resume is, what a resume should look like, and what a resume needs to do in order to be able to assist you in your job search. The first question that we always get is, what is a resume? The simple answer to this is that a resume is a marketing document you're preparing about yourself. You choose what a resume says and how that is presented. Resumes are typically very short, never more than 2 pages. Job applications, in contrast, are specific questions that an employer asks their candidates. When you're given a job application, you must provide answers to the questions that are asked and in the format that the employer specifies. Also, job applications can be extremely long. Another term that also gets thrown out pretty regularly is CV, or curriculum vitae. A resume focuses on your employment and your achievements within your employment history. Resumes may not be comprehensive. You can choose to eliminate information that isn't relevant to the position you're seeking or that's particularly old, and they're the most common way of looking at things across the U.S. A CV, in contrast, is a complete listing of your life's work and significant achievements, and they're very common in fields where you're dealing with publications and awards, such as academia and science, but also in art and a few other fields. So if you see a position that asks for a CV, your resume is not going to be the document you need to send. CVs do not have an upper page limit. It's also worth noting that a CV is far more common internationally in European organizations. The other question that we often get is, why do I even need a resume? The answer to this is mainly about saving yourself time. Some employers will utilize applicant tracking software, while other employers will review a resume directly. In the event of an employer who is reviewing a resume directly, obviously you will have needed that resume. So preparing it beforehand will simply mean you have less pressure when you apply for that job. Employers who use applicant tracking software, which is a computer program that asks all applicants the same question and then tries to compare their responses to find the best fit for the employer, will often have applicant tracking software that can read your resume and fill out some of the fields for you. So even when the resume may not be what the employer looks at directly, having prepared it will actually save you time. So if your resume is a marketing document that you're preparing about yourself, it's important to know what it needs to include. At a minimum, most resumes include your contact information, your work history, and your educational history. You can also include a brief personal profile and any relevant certifications, skills, or volunteer work for the position you're applying for. The first part of our resume is our contact information. After all, we want a potentially interested employer to be able to reach out to us and offer us an interview or the actual position. At the very least, your contact information needs to include your phone number, your email address, and your name. Physical address information can be included. If you choose to do so, you may either include your complete street address or just the city and town in which you are currently living. If you maintain a LinkedIn presence or a professional website, those may also be included in your contact information. If you don't maintain either of these regularly, there's no reason to go out seeking one. Many candidates do not have either resource. Professional profile sections are an entirely optional portion of resumes, but if you choose to include one, the appropriate place to do so is right after your contact information. The goal behind a professional profile is to be a short statement which is memorable and can be used as a descriptor for your candidacy when a hiring manager or hiring committee are talking internally. The most important part of your resume, and the portion which will almost always be the longest, is your work experience. Keeping in mind that your resume is a marketing document about yourself, we don't need to list every job we've ever held on a resume. Usually we want to focus on the 3 to 5 most relevant and list those. When making entries for our work experience, it's important for us to include our employer's name, the job or position title that we held, the dates we were employed, and what city we were employed in. Once we've included these pieces of information, we also need to list either our accomplishments or responsibilities within each role. Ideally, we want to focus on accomplishments. These are simply more interesting for potential employers. Some roles do not have easily quantifiable accomplishments. In this case, listing responsibilities and job duties is perfectly acceptable. Let's take a moment to look at a couple of examples of good versus bad work experience sections. In this first section, you see a well put together work experience area. You can easily tell who the employer was for each position that is listed. You can see the dates that the employee was employed, and you can see a quick overview both of the accomplishments that the employee had and of the responsibilities that they had. In the second set, you see that the person has written out paragraphs describing what they did. The immediate response of most hiring managers is going to be to ignore this entire section. Quite simply, the paragraph is unwieldy and difficult for me to parse. Additionally, there's a lot of repeated information here. When you look closely, you can see that the name of the employer is listed at the beginning of the entry, but it's also referred to repeatedly inside the actual paragraphs. In the first paragraph, there's a promotion mentioned, but that position is never listed in this work experience. The second entry on this work experience was a 2-week position where no real skills could have been learned, and therefore the position is irrelevant. As we just mentioned, sometimes you have a promotion or you move laterally at a company. When this happens, your work experience needs to reflect that this was the case. For a vertical promotion or moving between roles with similar responsibilities, you can often list them just by listing the positions and grouping all your accomplishments into one section. For a lateral movement, you would often have to list the 2 separate positions and the accomplishments or responsibilities of each position. Immediately after your work experience should be your education section. Each entry in your education section should include the name of the college, the degree or course of study you were embarked on, and the graduation date if you graduated, and if you haven't graduated yet, it should include your dates that you're attending. Generally speaking, you don't need to include your high school or GED status in your education section. The exception to this is if you are working in a field where a high school diploma or GED is not typically common. The final things that are included on many resumes are certifications and professional licenses and additional skills that you bring to a position. For certifications and professional licenses, it's important to make sure that you include any that are relevant to the position. Any certification or license that has an expiration date should have that expiration date listed. This allows an employer to know whether they're going to need to get you to renew that license or not. When you're listing skills on your resume, it's best to keep those skills as concrete as possible. Most hiring managers and most hiring committees will dismiss any subjective traits that you list. Quite frankly, most people are bad judges of themselves. Only claim skills that you actually have, and you should be prepared to demonstrate proficiency in those skills if requested.